Alright, looking at crimes again for another group of classic animation villains, this time from Sony Animation. Although they haven't been around for as long as Disney or Dreamworks, Sony has created some of the most beloved animated films of the last 20 years. So let's head back to their humble beginnings and decide which of the earlier villains get off easy and which will regret their actions. Hey guys, I'm Brad with WickedBinge, and this is sentencing Sony Animation villains for their crimes. We're gonna start with their first film, 2006's Open Season. This film only has one villain, but he is really dangerous. Everyone, please welcome Shyr to the stand. A hunter who is as cruel as he is dim-witted, Shyr is focused on taking out many forest animals. This makes him not only a mass animal murderer, but also a poacher. His attempts to take out Boog and Elliot add another offense to his sentence, that being animal cruelty. Although Shyr is a competent hunter, he's hardly an expert driver. He frequently runs off the road and swerves into other lanes, nearly killing Elliot once. So we can add reckless driving. While Shyr might have failed to hunt down the heroes, that doesn't erase all the animals we know he's killed, from seeing his trophies displayed in his home. Shaw's a danger to not just forest animals, but also his fellow man, which has led us to sentence him to 15 years in prison. Some could argue he deserves a harsher sentence, but he's not the most competent villain, so we gave him some leniency. But make no mistake, Shyr will be in the doghouse for a long time. At least, he'll have someone who will listen to all the strange conspiracy theories, hopefully. Next is 2007's Surf's Up. This movie also has one villain, and it's the appropriately named Tank Evans. Tank is a superstar surfer who has an ego as big as his torso. At a glance, he seems like a bully. He is a jerk, but a straight-up villain. As the movie progresses, however, Tank shows a darker side to his personality, proving that he'll go to any lengths to become the winner of the latest surf-off.
I love being the center of attention.
As he goes up against Cody Maverick, Tank cheats during the game and nearly tries to kill both him and his friend Chicken Joe. He will commit vandalism, which is evident by how he treats the memorial for Big Z. Tank has the smallest amount of crimes out of any main villain covered in this video, and as such, he gets out of severe punishment. We conclude that this penguin should serve 5 years in the slammer. Beyond that, it's likely that Tank will get his cherished trophies rescinded from his possession. Which one do you think will get under his skin? The next movie is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. With its release came another villain in the form of the Bruce Campbell-voiced Mayor Shelbourne. He puts the corrupt and corrupt politician. Shelbourne is concerned only with his approval ratings, and he will even resort to crime to keep those numbers up. Even after Flint warns him about the device, he blackmails him to keep it running, promising he will give him all that he can ever want if he stays in line.
Here's what I heard. Blah, 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 science, bigger.
Not only is this an obvious case of blackmail, but considering this almost leads to the destruction of the entire island, we can also add abuse of power and reckless endangerment. Although he doesn't look like the violent type, Shelbourne does indeed try to kill Flint Lockwood with a giant radish. Though this fails, it leads to a food storm, causing more chaos and destruction. His actions resulted in the most amount of wrongdoing out of any villain here thus far, and as such, we appropriately sentence him to 40 years in prison. While he could have walked away with a lighter sentence if his offenses were contained to himself, the fact that they caused the citizens of his town so much strife makes him most definitely deserving of a long time in prison. On the bright side, he's at least got a lot of time to start prepping for a re-election campaign. The next character is Flint Lockwood. While he is the main character, it's inarguable that Flint's inventions are the primary instigator of the conflict. His food machine leads to mass destruction, and later on, the loss of the entire town. That's a bad act for a good guy to commit, so it makes sense that we put him on trial. While Flint's brain has done bad things, we can't forget about the good he's accomplished. He cleans up and takes care of his problem, and becomes a leader in Swallow Falls, even in the face of unseen destruction.
I have a plan! This flash drive contains a kill code.
Besides that, we can't ignore the fact that Flint was always being used by Mayor Shelbourne, who we just put on trial. That doesn't absolve him of any guilt, but it does show that Flint has a far better conscience than good old Shelbourne. So we give Mr. Lockwood our first pardon of the video. Flint has shown that he is far more of a hero than he is a villain, and it seems silly to punish him severely for the actions of a far more corrupt individual. Flint isn't perfect, he's only human, and that's more we can say for most of our other characters. Jumping ahead to 2011, we have the Smurfs. Our first character is Gargamel. We've covered a lot of dastardly and despicable characters in this series, but we're not exaggerating when we say Gargamel might be the most vile. His main goal is to wipe out the entirety of the Smurfs. That's genocide.
One tiny drop will Give me the power to capture them all.
While this goal never becomes a reality, Gargamel tries many times to get rid of the Smurfs, which we'll consider as attempted murder. He also assaults and tortures the Smurfs, further worsening his sentence. And don't think for a second that Gargamel is any better behaved around others. He's abusive towards his cat and has even resisted arrest. With all this in mind, we think everyone will agree when we give Gargamel our first and only death penalty of the video. The attempt at genocide alone seals the deal, but those other offenses certainly didn't make him look any better. Will Gargamel have any regrets? Probably just one. If only he could have gotten a hold of those Smurfs. The next character is Azrael. While Azrael is guilty of aiding Gargamel in his many missions to thwart the Smurfs, Azrael doesn't really have any evil characteristics exclusive to himself. He's just a cat, and not even a talking one. When you consider those aspects of his character, it's a little hard to give him a sentence, no matter how severe or easy. As such, Azrael joins Flint in the Parting Club. He's more of an unwilling servant. Azrael isn't guilty of any notable crime beyond helping, and even then, he doesn't have the best relationship with Gargamel. He needs a new owner. Hopefully, he ends up with someone nicer than Gargamel, although somebody better behaved than that fellow shouldn't be too hard to find. It's now time to talk about the villains of the film that really put Sony Animation on the map. Hotel Transylvania. We're gonna start very briefly with Dracula. No, he's not a villain, but he does commit some minor crimes that we'd like to talk about, even by monster standards. The first is the fact that he essentially deceives his daughter to ensure that she stays in his castle. And although the intentions were good, we're gonna say that convincing your teenage child that the entire world hates her and is out to get her, and the only way to stay safe is to be confined to a remote castle, is a tad psychologically abusive. His intentions were good, and given the fact that Dracula had suffered a great loss in the past, which motivated this behavior, we're gonna let him off easy with 1 year community service, specifically signing autographs for monster fans. Moving on to Quasimodo Wilson. While he doesn't play as big of a part in the film as the villains of the sequels do, Quasimodo is without a doubt one of the most disgusting characters we covered in this series. To put it bluntly, Quasimodo is a cannibal. He makes food using things like spleens, and both kidnaps and tries to cook Jonathan to make one of these dishes. His plan soon ends in ruin, but it's a pretty shocking plan for a villain in an animated movie. How many cannibals can you think of in the Disney canon? Due to the severity of these crimes, Quasimodo is another villain who has earned himself the death penalty, and we doubt anybody will come to his defense. It's anyone's guess as to how he would be disposed of, but in a world full of vampires, werewolves, and other disturbing monsters, we can't imagine it'll be quick and painless. Perhaps the Kraken would take care of him? Whatever the outcome, it certainly won't be pleasant. No villain is complete without a sidekick. Next is Esmeralda. As an accomplice to Quasimodo's efforts, we can accuse Esmeralda of aiding and abetting. She is a sidekick, so it kinda comes with the territory. She helps him kidnap the human Jonathan, and she also helps Quasimodo as he tries to cook him. Later on, to prove that Jonathan is indeed a human, she assaults him, giving her more freedom in the story instead of just being a pawn in Quasimodo's game. Overall, Esmeralda's crimes definitely don't carry the same weight as Quasimodo's, but we can't ignore the major role she had in those goals. As a result, we have decided to give Esmeralda 25 years in prison. Her role as a sidekick and servant in the story are enough to get her out of a much harsher sentencing, but at the same time, the severity of the crimes she partakes in aren't enough to get her off that easy. So she'll have plenty of time to think about her actions. Alright guys, that's it. Let us know in the comments section if you agree with our choices, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.